Good evening, everybody. My name is Jeff Broadleib. I'm the chair of the Southampton Village Board of Architectural Review and Historic Preservation. I would like to call to order this meeting of the Southampton Village Board of Architectural Review and Historic Preservation on October 26, 2020. And by way of introduction and roll call, let me introduce the board members. To my left, Sarah Latham, and to her left, Peter DeWitt. To my right, John Gregory, and sitting in the audience is our newest member, Mark McIntyre, who will be observing this session and will be joining us on the dais next week.
Want a motion to open?
Yes, whereas we have a quorum, I move to open the meeting. May I please have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Okay, duly noted, Annette. Also participating and assisting the board in tonight's meeting are our legal counsel, Alice Cooley, our historic consultant, Zach Studenroff, our recording secretary, Antoinette Edwards, our videographer, Charlie and Kat Styler. And I'd like to just take a moment. Many of you have seen me from being on the board as a participant, but this is my first evening in this chair other than filling in on occasions. Susan Stevenson has served this board in the community with dedication and passion and has been appointed by the trustees to the Village Zoning Board of Appeals. She will be an excellent addition to that board, and we look forward to her experience with the ARB being a contributor to fostering better relations between the two boards and better coordination. So on behalf of my fellow board members and the village, I want to thank her for her service to the ARB and wish her well in her new role in the ZBA. I'd also like to put out a thank you to Diane Greger. Before coming to these meetings, each applicant has to submit an application, has to go before the building department for compliance review, and then coming to us. And then after coming to us, assuming approval is granted, the building department will work with that applicant to see them through the building permitting and eventually to the completion of their project. The building department is probably one of the busiest and leanest departments in the village. The workload has grown even greater as more people during the COVID crisis come out here to live full time, and the property transfers have increased, and they are obviously the result of more applications. Every person in that department works extremely hard. And we will miss the support of Diane Greger, who's been a long-time mainstay at the building department, who will be retiring at the end of this week. So a thank you to Diane for her service and best wishes in her retirement. I'd also like to thank, speaking of the building department, Chris Talbot, the village's building inspector and building department leader, who is here with us this evening to help traffic flow smoothly. And it's particularly beneficial to me and to the board, I believe, as it has been in the last several meetings. When he's here, that we can call upon him for his input and counsel. So thank you, Chris. So I'd like, in taking over this chair, to at various times during the meetings, and it's here now probably more to the benefit of those who are listening and those in the audience, but just to repeat and remind people what the purpose of this board is, which it says as in the village code. It is the intent of this article to establish procedures and design criteria necessary to preserve and enhance the character, historical interest, beauty, and general welfare of the municipality.
Yeah, don't mess with it now.
And to, I'm sorry, Charlie? Okay. And to ensure that the location and design of buildings, structures, and open spaces in the municipality shall aid in creating a balanced and harmonious composition of the whole, as well as in the relationship of its several parts. So with that stated and understood, let's begin with the minutes from the previous meeting, which was held on September 28th. And has everybody had a chance to read those minutes?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any corrections? Or does anybody wishes to make? If not, I move that we dispense with the reading of the minutes and accept them as submitted. Is there a second on that?
So
Okay, and to vote?
Aye.
I will abstain as I was not present, but you have 3 votes, so therefore we're good to go. So, with the minutes having been accepted, let's move on to the first agenda item. Hold on a second, folks. And that being signs, but there are no signs. So, hence we will move from signs to driveway gates.
Written decisions?
I'm sorry, thank you, Sarah. So, written decisions, and there was one outstanding for Love Nest, 28 Gin Lane. I understand council is still working on that, correct?
Correct.
So we don't have that. And Zach, I may,
Yeah.
I'd like you to review that application.
Sure.
It's an historic
I don't understand.
property, while the board has opined on it, and I fully respect their position on it. Perhaps you can just take a quick look at that.
Of course. Yep.
So driveway gates. The first one on the agenda is 11 Wyandanch LLC, 11 Wyandanch Lane for driveway gates. Okay, so,
No, they go up there.
okay, hold on one second while I just get out my notepad. As I said, I'm going to try to summarize at the end, so I'm only as good as what I can write down.
Could I have your name for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Jeff Ulisse.
Jeff, your last name again?
Ulisse.
Oh, you lease, okay.
Almost like Ulysses S. Grant, but without the extras.
That's, I'm not sure that's somebody to emulate necessarily, but, okay, and this is 11 Wyandanch. Okay, so, Jeff, unlike other, in the past session, we're gonna give you an opportunity to speak uninterrupted, and then we'll get comments from the board.
Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you, Chairman. And I guess this is a little bit of a privilege to be your first agenda item, right?
Right. Be gentle with me.
See how that goes. So yes, we're presenting two sets of driveway gates to be located at each entrance of 11 Wyandanch.
Mhm.
Now this property is located at the corner of Wyandanch and Toilsome. Not necessarily in the historic district. The gates span a width of 16 feet, to be placed also 18 feet from pavement. The gates will also feature two posts, which will be 7 feet in height, and the width of the post will be 16 inch by 16 inch. The gates also will feature vertical members, which are 2 by 2 inch spindles, spaced out by 2 inches as well, with a solid panel going across the bottom, ranging from 3 feet and 6 inches. The entire gate will be white, AZAC material. And as far as the property is concerned, my client recently purchased the property and wanted to add additional privacy that's already existent on Wyandanch. And I'm sure the board has seen numerous gates. They're not identical to this one, but we believe this design is harmonious with the existing neighborhood.
So let's see there. You went through the dimensions, design, the material, the columns, lights.
No lights.
No lights, okay. And so there's an issue of transparency and harmony in the neighborhood. So I'm going to poll the board members if you're complete with your statement. Peter, your thoughts?
I think having a gate is fine because they do exist in Wyandanch. My only issue is with the opaque bottom. We were trying to get 50% open on all the gates.
Thank you, Peter. Sarah?
I also understand that there are gates in the neighborhood. I would say for the future that both the material and the color should be indicated on your drawing.
Absolutely.
Because that was the first thing that I thought, I asked myself. So.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
No, I agree with Peter regarding the transparency issue. I mean, you know, gates looks like they're appropriate for that neighborhood. However, the gate shouldn't be a blockade to the vision of the property itself. So the gate is fine, but I think if there's something to be done to reduce the solid surfaces, it would be a good thing.
Right, so let me add my 2 cents in, and this is part of the summary. Because then this way you can respond to that as well.
Sure, absolutely.
So I too have a concern with the heaviness, opaqueness, the blockade aspect of it. This is one of the most beautiful streets in Southampton. It's canopied by sycamores for almost a half a mile.
Absolutely.
It's a beautiful street. It's generally open. There are some gates there that I would define as, it ranges from simple and diminutive
Right.
to overstated and large. And there was the fact that some gates exist there, Jeff, and the fact that some may be large, and in fact may be larger than this.
Right.
It's not this board's intent to make things worse, but I use that, don't take that personally.
Sure, sure.
But not to add to it, if you will, in terms of closing down that very open street and giving that sense of expanse. I mean, that street has been photographed and painted. My wife happens to paint it on a regular basis. And so I think there's several things that could be done to address Peter and John's concerns. And I don't know, was the material the AZAC, is that, I mean,
Well,
AZAC
it looks like
versus...
wood.
It looks like wood once it's painted.
Okay.
It's a plastic material, but
Okay.
it's,
So let's, maybe you can address the board's general
Sure.
concern that I'm summarizing in terms of its closing down what otherwise would be open.
Sure. I kind of came prepared with some precedent, but overhearing your previous conversation, I probably won't present that because
Yeah.
I know you guys aren't necessarily, as you explained, are necessarily trying to close in that street. So
Right.
we're totally fine in that regard. Now the solid panel going across the bottom of the gate, we can reduce that, just not sure to what degree that would appeal to the board. Right now it's at 3 feet 6 inches, which is approximately half of the height of the gate. Could reduce it a bit more, or would you prefer a change in that regard, or not have a solid panel at all?
In a thought that I had in looking at this is that there are several variables. There is the actual design, and then there are the dimensions. So one can make it less opaque and open up the property more by reducing its scale and by opening it up more. So those are 2 options. And you may have some thoughts.
Yeah,
A smaller scale gate and one that's more open. And if you want to come back with a design that meets that, I think the board would be open to looking at that.
Our general rule is 50% transparency, thereabouts.
We have a broad discretion over the design of the gates. And when it comes to the look of a street, it starts with total openness,
Right.
0. 100% transparency, 0 opaqueness.
Right.
On that continuum, is 50% the right number? In some cases, perhaps. I mean, the board traditionally has used that as a benchmark. In this particular street, there are a number of gates, if you talk about other gates in the area, that are far more open than 50%, 60%, 70%.
But a minimum-
And
minimum.
some of them on some of the largest properties.
Right.
So this is in terms of this particular property, it's actually one of the smaller properties on Wyandanch. Not the smallest, because
Right.
there's some smaller ones. So I think you're hearing from the board more openness
Yeah.
in whatever way you can do that, either by scale or just creating a design that's more open.
Okay, I can go back to the client and see if they're amenable to a more open gate design. I also want to just make sure that I'm clear also as far as the solid panel going across the bottom, that you guys, even if we were to reduce that and maybe extend the vertical spindles, if that would be something that the board would be amenable, or would you prefer the solid panel to go away completely? I didn't want to present to you another design that's, you know, similar to this, but with a smaller panel.
If I could have a motion to close the work.
Yeah, solid panel going across the bottom. You know, I could reduce that by even half, which would create a bit more openness going across the top as well. But you know,
Really up to you.
All of that could possibly work,
okay.
but we don't know until we see it.
Sure,
So,
absolutely.
My suggestion is go back to the client, share with them our concerns, come back with something that meets those concerns, both in terms of smaller scale
Right.
and greater openness. And I think I know, if you drive down the streets, you will find some beautiful examples of very simple, very open, very small scale things, some of which are not even more than 4 feet high.
Right.
Okay? And, you know, when you start out in your statement that you want privacy,
Right.
that by definition is the opposite of
Sure.
open. So somehow you have to work with your client to understand that the community wishes openness, and somehow we'll have to marry their desire for privacy.
Sure. And we'll work on that and come back with a more appealing design. Just wanted to get clarification so that when I do return that we kind of touch on those specific points. This way we're all kind of in line in that regard. So that I can understand. I cannot table it, honestly, right?
No. So
We can
your
adjourn.
choices were either vote, which you would not have to vote, so
Right.
that's not a good choice, or you could request an adjournment. And
Yeah.
the next meeting is November 9th, and then I think the one after that is 2 weeks hence.
Sure.
So,
So I'll request an adjournment then.
okay,
November
to
9th?
November
November
9th.
9th, yes.
Okay, so understand, Jeff.
Uh-huh.
By the way, do you prefer Jeff or Jeffrey?
No, I'm actually just Jeff.
Jeff,
Don't
okay.
ask me why.
So if it's for November 9th, then your submission has to be in by Thursday noon before that meeting.
Yes.
So that's roughly 10 days from now. So if you think you can make that,
Yes, that's ample
good.
time.
And I think to Sarah's point, if you can be more detailed and perhaps even a computer graphic, I think there was a picture in the file, was there not? But maybe. But anyway,
Yes.
something a bit more than a line drawing, I think would give us a
Sure.
better chance.
I'll offer a little bit more detail. This
Okay.
way the board is definitely more aware of what's going on.
Okay, so, I move that we accept the applicant's request for adjournment to the next meeting, November 9th. Do I have a second on that? So moved.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, Jeff, thank you very much. Antoinette, do you want us to individually do a roll call on the votes? I mean, Alice, do you care?
Yeah.
One way or the other?
I mean, as long as Antoinette can tell who's speaking,
Okay.
then I don't think we need that. Yeah.
Just think right.
I guess that's hard to do with the mask on, isn't it?
But it can be hard to tell who's talking.
But
So,
I mean, everybody should say aye
Yeah.
on that. I
Yeah.
do.
if you ever have a question about who made the motion, you can just tell me.
Sure. Well, usually they say abstain or a nay.
Yeah, it's just sometimes it's tricky.
Okay. Like whatever you guys want to do.
Yeah, I'm fine by it.
Okay.
So the next application, I'm just gonna write this down there. Okay, so the next application is, thank you, William and Scarlett Robertson, 445 Hill Street for driveway gates. And always good to see you, so
Hi,
let us know your name even though we know it, and then,
that's okay, that's important. It's John Bennett, for the applicant, Scarlett Robinson. Always happy to be here for her. She's a nice lady.
Good.
And
So-
Mark Cirillo, who's Watergate.
Okay, good. So, John and Mark, indulge me for a second, if I may, because, John, I actually want to thank you for bringing the issue of driveway gates to a more detailed examination. As has been submitted to the board and supplied to you, our counsel, Alice Cooley, has determined that the board does not have the authority to disallow, per se, the erection of a driveway gate, but does have, by village code, the responsibility and authority related to the aesthetic elements and harmonious nature of the submission, and as you said yourself in the last meeting that I did listen to, has broad discretion in that regard. So, John, what I'd like to propose to make this, not propose, but I'm going to be asking our historic council to do, inasmuch as this is in the historic district, is to review the application, to visit the site, and to return to the board within 10 days his report on the gates in the context of the of that property and the historic neighborhood.
Sure.
So I think until you're welcome to make a statement, but obviously we're going to table this for a written decision pending that report.
Well, no, Zach hasn't, I don't think Zach was asked to look at it before, so,
Right.
that's fair, you know?
Good.
I just might want to, I was going to, if it's okay, I was
Oh,
just
yeah,
going to,
yeah, you can make.
I
you can make
gave Zach a
statement.
copy of the, both the schematic, the drawing of it and the actual photograph, because they have, and that part, this part is unfortunate, they were installed, so.
Yeah,
And I'm not suggesting for
No, no.
any,
It was
Yeah, we will, there will be
Well, you
no,
knew that,
there will
yeah.
be no action taken, I mean, the gates are there, so, you know.
No, I understand there's, you know, that's an unfortunate thing that happened, but we're here nevertheless, and I would agree that you have discretion. I've always said, you can tell me what they look like, you can't tell me whether or not I can have them, which is pretty much succinctly what I was saying. I just wanted to maybe give to Zach a couple of illustrative examples, which is the one gate at 483 First Neck, which we're trying to mimic. By the way, the pillars were there. They were there, because I remember, as a matter of fact, I looked at the application that we had. You might remember that Ms. Robinson's property was the subject of some litigation by the neighbor, and I went back and looked at even that application, and the gates were there.
The gates or the pillars?
I'm sorry. Thank you. Please, thank you for correcting me. But it's much more than they're much more than 50% transparent, as you can see. Very simple design. But again, I don't want to have a long agenda.
Right.
So
Okay, well, that's-
Zach's going to take a look at it, and if
Thank
there's
you,
any other
John.
questions, that's great.
Thank you. All right,
Thanks.
thanks,
Okay.
Mark.
Bye bye.
Thanks, stay well.
I have the next one. I think I do anyway.
Okay, so, that and that's Google.
Oh, yeah.
So, let's see, there's no action to be taken by the board on that, Alice, is there?
Nope.
Nope, okay. Essentially a continuation pending written decision. Okay. I'm sorry,
Zach's report.
the file being complete, subject to receiving Zach's report and the board having the opportunity to discuss it. Okay. All right, so now, lady and gents, and listening audience, we move on to public hearings, non-historic. And so, folks, let me take some notes. 1 second.
Have these renderings? You have them? Okay.
Hold on a second, fellas.
Let's just while it's done, benefit the applicant, Bill Slices. I was hired after this process started, and I did view.
No, it's all- we haven't called the applicant.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
So let's, what I'd like to do is call the application. I'd like to recognize the principals, because I'd like to chat with them a little bit before we proceed. Okay? All right, so I'm calling the application of 31 Roscoe, what is this? Roscoe Developers LLC. 31 Roscoe Drive to construct two-story single-family dwelling and detached garage. And I'd like the principals and the representatives to the podium. Gentlemen, okay, can you please identify yourselves?
My name is John Bennett. I'm a lawyer at Bennett and Reed, 212 Windmill Lane, Southampton, New York.
And
Bill?
Bill?
My name is Bill Slight. I'm the architect. My office is in Watermill.
Okay.
Mr.
And
DeVito?
Frank DeVito.
Frank. So, you've all been here before, so you know the functions of the board. At the last meeting, there was an inordinate amount of time spent on what the board could and could not do. You're obviously welcome to make a statement to that effect, but we're not going to engage in debates this evening as to what the board can and cannot do. For us, it's clearly stated in the code. And so, in the positive spirit, what I'd like to do is to move on from where we were before. So, for the benefit of those who are maybe listening, new to the case, and John, I'm sure you've looked at the tapes, and there's not going to be a test on it. But at the last session, there were several items that were of issue, and I'd like us to focus tonight on what changes have been made regarding that. So let me just summarize them a bit. There were various design elements that were in question. There was the issue of a dramatic rounded roof window, multiple window motifs, and embellishments that gave the board rise to making statements as tower-like, busy, then there was an issue of massing in terms of it being monumental. There was an issue of the site plan, landscape plan, streetscape, like I said, fenestration, railings, harmony or not with the neighborhood, non-residential look, and issues regarding the second floor balcony. So what I'd like to do, guys, is let's focus on the changes you've made to address those issues.
Let me do the highlights and then, of course, the design.
Sure.
Functional.
Okay.
I was hired after this. I looked at the tape, and there was a great love for the design, not only by the owner, but by the architect and everything. I listened and I understood, and you know, as always, I think I know more than I do sometimes, but I like to go back and look at some antecedents. And it's that battered design, which I could only find out here in the church in Sag Harbor. That's, you know, it's the splayed bottom of the tower. And actually, I was lucky enough to play Briar's Head the other day in a beautiful Choprino Wharton designed clubhouse, and they're primarily architectural firm, but that had it as well. But that's a clubhouse. So what we did was we took that out in terms of, and made it a more, and I'll show you a lot of antecedents for this in the village. We took away that battered design. This is the before and the after, and we changed the fenestration. I'll let Bill explain that more, but that was certainly what I saw as one of the sticking points for the board. It did appear, I mean, I think I've seen that design in residences, and I saw it in literature in residences, but it's not worth arguing about it. That was an element that made the board feel that it was institutional. We just did away with that, number one. Number two, I think the second story roof deck is gone. Number three, there was some concern about a large window in the garage, and that's gone as well.
Oh, I'm sorry, can you repeat that, John?
There was a large window. There was a large window in the garage that was on the front. You can see the difference between. It's shown in the renderings.
Right.
That was gone. There was some concern about that, and that was there. Then there was, I think, and again, maybe this faded away, but I'm not sure. There was concern about the setback along the street, and my response to that was twofold. One is that I don't think we had that battle over on Herrick Road with the Chrysler residents, and the board finally acknowledged that they had no authority, site plan authority, to push the house back one way or the other as long as it conformed with their setback. But we did also, Bill was kind enough to, is this it, Bill?
Yes.
Where's the house that did they cut it off?
It looks like you cut off part of.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
I have a copy.
We did show.
I have the larger copy.
Just to show that the house is a consistent setback.
I have enough
Even
copy.
assuming arguendo that the board have that power, which unequivocally has been determined that you don't, to move the house back and forth. No, it has been. It has been.
Excuse me?
I said it has been. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you had a non-verbal response to that. I apologize. I'm sorry.
So, let me just for a second, before you got here, and I should announce it to the public, and I will. So we're experimenting with a procedure where we're gonna let the applicants speak uninterrupted for a reasonable amount of time. And then for the board to comment, and then for the applicant to respond to the board's comments, and then open it up to public comment, and then the applicant to respond again, and then we can have a general discussion. So we're not going to batter you with questions. We're not going to do any nonverbal motions. So
Yeah,
you know,
that would have been my
if we
mistake.
call
That
for
would
the
have
call.
been my misperception.
No. And I'm just sharing this with you, so you know you're okay to speak at will, John.
Excuse me?
You're okay to speak at will.
Oh, no. So those were the main points, but I thought obviously the design professional should expand on them.
Okay, great. Thank you, John.
Okay, so Jeff, you did hit me most of the points that
Yeah.
I think came up in the discussion the last time, and we've really made an attempt to address each one of those in some way. The principle being, I think that the concern was about the scale of the central part of the front of the house. So what we've done is we've created a horizontal band, and that band also spans what had been the stacked windows. If you like, I have copies for every member of the board.
That
Would
would
be helpful?
Yes, please. Yeah, because unfortunately we're without a video screen,
All right.
and to the extent that we have small sets and pictures, that will help. And by the way, if anybody has difficulty hearing me, because my voice doesn't carry particularly well without a mask, let alone with a mask, so let me know. I can't do anything about the accent, but okay.
So, I brought a copy of the rendering that was presented the last time, and then a copy of the revised.
Are these two? What are these?
There's a front and a rear.
Front and rear. That's the way most things are. Let's see. Okay, got you. Thank you, guys.
Squared away?
Yep.
Okay. So, to reiterate, I've added a horizontal band, which by introducing this very strong horizontal element, it reduces the verticality of the center part, and I think that really addresses one of the principal concerns that the board had, and also by interrupting the windows, which also takes a little bit of the stress away from the verticality of the windows and introduces the horizontal element. That horizontal line basically carries across the entire first level of the house, and it gives it a lot of horizontality, as well as the projected eaves of the second floor, and also having the hip roofs throughout the house. Kind of reduces the mass of the building by bringing having no intrusion upon the side yards or the front yards with projecting gables. We've also tried to give a little softer aspect to some of the detailing on the house. We've added some stone piers and the tapered, craftsman style columns on those piers a small balustrade spanning between the piers. I've also, for the garage element, I've taken away the cupola, taken away the arched window, reduced the overhangs on the roof, and generally tried to soften that, because I had heard in the comments of the board that you wanted to make it look a little bit more incidental to the principal building. So that was the reason for that response. If we're looking at the rear elevation, there were a number of comments at that time about what was it had a second-story balcony. I think that was principally one of the things that the neighbors had the most comments about that. I think, in fact, almost all the comments gathered right around that element. We've eliminated that, so that, and by so doing, we no longer needed doors to exit that room onto that balcony. So the windows that are on that upper story of the facade now are matching. Matching to the. Where are we? Sorry. When you're doing it upside down, it's always a little hard. Yeah, the windows are the same rather than windows and doors. And I've made a little smaller window here, and also carried the expression of the stone piers and the bungalow or craftsman style columns across the veranda at the back of the house. I think that hits most of the things we talked about. As John had mentioned, we also provided you with that showing you that the house conforms with the other setbacks in the neighborhood. The adjacent property at 330 Hill Street has the same setback as this house, so it's going to be compatible with the neighborhood in that regard.
Now, the other thing that I thought would be helpful, and again, I don't want to belabor these because I just asked you to look at them. We had some of these things were previously submitted, but I tried to collect them all. I think Mrs. DeVito has some images as well as we do, but there are two things that when I heard some of the comments about the height of the glass and the projection out, it led me to look at some projects that I had been involved in some in the historic district, some not. It was 65 Coopers, which has that glass box projection as well as a facade with a lot of glass. This is in the historic district. And then, of course, I immediately thought of the old Ferrer house down at the end of Captain's Neck, which has these projections out from the main building. Again, this is an old. Carriage house is always a misnomer, because a carriage house, you couldn't live in a carriage house. It was for the carriages, but this purportedly was an old carriage and groom's quarters down at the end of Captain's Neck Lane. Then also in terms of the verticality of the glass, these are just some of them at 96 Leo's Lane, which is in the neighborhood, that front projecting element. Also 63 Hunting, which is that very vertical last section. These are all in the village, and then Mr. DeVito had some. So I'll give these to the board for their consideration as to how this element is not significantly different than some other things you've seen, not only in the historic district and in the village. Frank, you might want to hand those out, but in the neighborhood itself. So we did try to be. We listened. I think that's pretty obvious. We tried to take some of the elements that the board thought was concerned about. We probably didn't go as far as some people wanted, but that's not what this is about. It's about trying to get to some sort of compromise.
So, did you folks submit a streetscape and a landscaping plan?
No, they gave me we submitted the survey that shows the survey of the property matched up into the same scale as the survey with the adjacent property.
The actual, the landscape designer with the plan was in an accident today. She could not make
Right,
it. We
so,
were
all
not-
right, so there's no landscape plan, and.
Well, there may not be a need for the landscape plan, I hope.
Well, in all fairness,
because,
Bill, there's a need if we ask for it.
Okay.
So let's, and it came up at the last meeting, and it was agreed that it would be supplied by the other principal. So,
Well, if that was a request, then we'll
Right.
have to get you that.
thank you, John. And so this is meant as a streetscape, these pictures, or I'm not sure what I'm looking at here.
Yeah, some of them show the streetscape of this, of
All right. So when we talk about a streetscape, so these are representative houses that you're suggesting?
Well, or emblematic of some of the elements that you see incorporated here. Both in the verticality of the glass and the projection from the main part of the building.
Well, let's continue on. I mean, I think, okay, I see what you're doing here. So in any event, so these are largely representative houses that support your statement, or at least suggest support your statement. And then, but there's no streetscape in the sense of looking at two houses either side and across the street and so on. So we'll hold that for a moment, whether the board thinks that that's necessary. Frank, did you want to add anything before we turn it over to the board for their comments?
No, just that we did listen to the board. We took away some of the critical features of the house, which was the elements on the garage, the rear deck that obviously Fred and Susan's friends and neighbors behind us had a problem with. We took that rear deck off. And we also took some of the glass out of the front staircase area in the front.
Right, okay.
So that Mrs. White wouldn't feel like anybody was on the stair looking at her across the street.
Understood what the intent was. Okay, okay, great. So, board members, let's start from the other side this time. John, your thoughts about style, materials, mass, line, color, detail, placement.
The removal of the balcony on the rear of the house, I think, is a vast improvement. I think it looks much better, and also aids the privacy of the neighbors, so that's a good thing. I do have a question on the garage. You said the arch was removed, but on the plan I have in the packet that I was given, it still has that arched.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we did that subsequent to that being.
Okay, I just want to make sure that.
I have a drafted plan of that.
Oh, that's okay, as long as it's included in the
If
final
you like,
plan.
I'll put that into the
Okay.
record tonight for you.
That would be fine.
What we're doing on stuff like this is just resubmit something that we can ultimately sign off. I'm really, Jonathan, I was trying to get away from Plan A, Plan B, you know, can you guys just sign here and accommodate it there? And I know you're an architect
Yeah,
and
that's
you
not
can do
what
all
was
those
happening
things.
here.
I
That,
just,
that archway is gone.
Okay, I just want
but let's,
because it wasn't in the plan, I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's fine.
the rear of the facade of the house, I think, is fine from my perspective. The garage, I think, is a great improvement with the removal of the arch window and the cupola on top, which was just a bit much. I still have an issue with that large window in the front, and it just still seems so big and commercial looking and out of place from my perspective, from a residential view. And the staircase in the window too. How does that appear from the street? I mean, to me that kind of like creates more of that commercial look of the building, having a stairway in that big window. How much of that is exposed to the exterior?
Well, not that much. You know, it's set back a little bit from the face of the glass, and it's only a middle portion of the stairs. There's about 9 risers, so it's not really the entire stair.
So it's on the lower part of that window.
So there's a landing and then another landing. So it really, it's I think it's 9 risers and it crosses about from where the horizontal band is here.
Mhm.
If you look,
Yeah.
see here, that is crossing through here. So that horizontal band actually obscures you're even seeing.
So the staircase takes a dog leg and goes up.
Yes, but I mean, to answer your question directly, because of that horizontal band, you won't see very much of the structure of the stair itself, the stair stringers going past
Which
it.
would have been the case with the other plan.
Right, right.
Okay. So that aside, I still think the window just looks much too big for a residential home in that neighborhood. And if there was a way to somehow separate the windows, I mean.
Are you saying, can I ask you a question? Are you saying that you feel that there aren't very many large panes of glass, like windows in the neighborhood, so that makes it
No, I think
compatible?
the facade of the house, that window still looks, I mean, we used the term last time, monumental. It just seems just oversized for the scale of the property. And
The two central windows that are uninterrupted by mullions. Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm not.
no,
Identifying. Okay.
that part, and also the fact that maybe it's the upper story window just seems out of place for a second story of a home.
Linear part of it, or I'm just trying to.
Here.
Oh, no.
I don't want to hear.
Well, we're gonna say, and what I'd like as much as possible, I mean, questions of clarification, perfectly legit discussions in terms of going back and forth. Let's have the board have the same uninterrupted chance to comment, but in issues of clarification, that's okay.
Yeah, so from my perspective, it appears too large as part of the facade of the house.
Okay.
So I'll leave it at that.
You can continue on, the floor is yours. Sarah?
I appreciate the changes that you've made as far as the batter and the balcony. But you've talked about the fact that you are indeed invoking the craftsman style, which I see in the columns and the brackets and some of the other details. And because of this, I mean, the craftsman details are really quite admirable. And I don't think actually that the central design with the stacked 2 stories of windows, even though broken by that horizontal band, is in keeping with the elements that you so admirably have shown. So to me, that's the only thing that's out of whack.
Peter?
Yeah, I think the central window, it's monumental. It looks either commercial or civic scale, in my view. It's, I think the problem is compounded by the way that volume penetrates the eave. It's higher than the eaves adjacent. And then, if that weren't enough, then the window also penetrates the frieze. So everything is pushing upward. And I don't find it domestic at all. And as far as the things you showed us, none of them are on center and a full 2-story height. This combines the worst of all of them that you showed as examples. Those are all mitigated by a strong horizontal or asymmetry, and you don't have that advantage. You're plump in the middle with this monumental window, and I still don't like it for the reasons I've said, domestic scale. Also, in the garage, you're putting a stone base. It looks like to me, I don't know, it seems a little anomalous. It's almost fancier than the house with stone there. It's a lot of stone for a secondary building. And those are my comments.
Thank you. So I will add my comments and then turn it back to you folks for your response. But like my fellow board members, I too have an issue with the expansive and large ground to roof window. And we're looking at this house in this location in this neighborhood, and that's what's germane. I would also say, just as a point of reference, some of the other examples were not necessarily approved by the board members here, including myself, and so not necessarily, it's not an issue, number one, the fact that a floor-to-ceiling window may exist several miles away, but we're looking at this property at this site. So I echo the concerns of my board members in terms of the style and the contradictory style that window has with the craftsman style, which, to Sarah's point, you guys have done a good job of implementing, but the window is out of context with that. The other thing that this window does, it evokes the comments of large, monumental, still commercial, and so although this is within the zoning guidelines of the 40-foot setback, where it's set and with that design, it gives a massive impression that is discordant with the neighborhood. And yes, you can build a house 40 feet, but on the other hand, given the design and of that window and all the other treatments, it presents massively. So let me let you folks respond, and then we'll open it up to public comment. John, Bill,
I think,
Frank?
Bill, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So let's, gentlemen, if you want to sit down for a second, we'll let the public comment, and then you will have your chance to speak yet once again. Okay. So, if any members of the public want to speak, come up and, yep, come on up. What's it, the expression, come on down?
Come on down.
Come on down.
I hope I win.
Well, first you're going to have to, you're not going to get a prize unless you give us your name.
All right, that's fine. It's Fred Blanford,
Okay, Fred, how do you spell your last name?
W-E-I-N,
Yep,
F as in Frank,
Yep.
U-R-T.
U-R-T.
And I reside at 45 Roscoe Drive.
Okay,
And I was at the first hearing with respect to this property. And I was just looking back at my notes and some of the comments that were made by the board, and it's been brought up again tonight that the proposed dwelling is highly unusual, not a traditional Southampton Village home, complicated, over the top, less residential than the neighborhood, monumental in scale. So, I think, as I recall, the conclusion that was drawn by the board was the suggestion for the applicants to walk the Roscoe neighborhood. Yes. Take a look at houses that are in the neighborhood, come back with a redesign that was more in keeping with the houses in the neighborhood. From what I can see, this isn't a redesign, it's a tweaking, if you will, of the original application. As far as the setbacks are concerned, I know that 45 is approximately 60 to 70 feet setback from the street. 45 is in line with 59, that's to the south. Those two houses are in line, so I don't know, when referring to the Hill Street house, that it's proper to eliminate 45 Roscoe and 59 as well. And also the houses across the street. I still go back to your suggestion, and that is that a house be designed that's more in keeping and compatible with the neighborhood. I know some comparables were brought up tonight that are in various locations within the village, but we're talking about the Roscoe community, and I think that's what the focus needs to be on. And I would ask again that you repeat that request, that they walk the neighborhood, come back with a redesign, not a tweaking of this, because again, that center window, it looks like an atrium, not in keeping with the Roscoe community. And I suggest that they come back with a redesign that's more compatible. Thank you.
thank you, Fred. Okay, anybody else care to speak from the public?
Not at the podium.
Oh, Evelyn, we're doing it at the desk. Thank you. Okay.
I understand that I'm late in giving you these. Does that mean you will not listen to the discussion, or?
Actually, so...
Because we saw each other Friday morning and you didn't say anything.
Let the chair recognize you, although I do recognize you, but let me recognize you in the formal sense, so please give us your name.
I will, of course. But I just wanted to know whether we were wasting time or whether I can go through this.
Evelyn, we're never wasting time with you.
My name is Evelyn Conrad, 18 South Roscoe Drive. And it's not a community, it is a subdivision. Forgive me, it's a subdivision, it's a legal subdivision. I'm a lawyer, so I have sworn an oath to uphold the Constitution and the law, the rule of law, and that is my point here tonight. I've given you a packet that I thought we might go through together because it'll make it a little easier and more understandable. The first is sort of a layman's understanding.
Evelyn, just happy to go through it, but not to have a legal lecture that's going to go 20 minutes. So if we could do it briefly, because we've read.
I can't understand you, sorry.
Sorry. If we can keep it brief and reasonable.
You've had a lot of time for everybody else. This is a question of my rights.
I understand, but we also have a procedure, and we've also had the opportunity to share a lot of your concerns about this issue, the subdivision, and the issue about notification and so on. So we're familiar with it, and what I'm saying is there's really no need to go through it page by page, word by word, but...
I don't intend to do that.
Okay, great. So let's proceed.
As I'm saying, this is a layman's understanding of it. I think I'm sure not everybody reads the Southampton Press. After that are three very important maps of the Roscoe Place subdivision, which is a legal subdivision. In fact, the deeds that the new owners have are the exact same deeds as I have, with the same restrictions, with the same concerns, with our right to enforce the common plan and scheme and all the terms of our deed. That's what those three. The first one, the 1960 map, is particularly interesting because I don't think you have to be a lawyer to grasp this. I highlighted where the 31 Roscoe Drive is, and I highlighted where my house is. And you can see that there has been a violation of somebody's rights, mine, for instance. The next thing is your mailing list that announced the public hearings. And on that mailing list, there are 6 houses, 6 property owners from Hill Street who have absolutely nothing to do with our subdivision. They do not have the same restrictions, the same covenants, or anything else. Thereafter, there is a page that is an affidavit from the previous owner, the only one of my house, which shows that there had never been any need to enforce anything because people just naturally did the right thing, which means that they enforced the common plan and scheme, the look of the place, that they did not violate the size, height, or anything else. They didn't have pool houses, which are strictly forbidden by our deeds. I think that's quite easily understandable. The next is a full paragraph of law, so you can read that on your own. That is the subdivision law that is not enforced. Incidentally, I have often talked to Chris Talbot about the mailing list and the fact that it is illegal, and he likes to come back with the fact that we do not have an owners association. That has absolutely nothing to do with the New York state law that gives us the right to enforce the common plan and scheme and the portions of the deed. The very same deeds are still given out. There is an interesting case around the corner from me that is now called 28 Raymond's, but the sales documents and the deed are 7 South Roscoe Drive, which you will also see on that first map. So we have had a long period of violating the rights of roughly 36 people at this point who own property in our legal subdivision. This started in 2006 when the predecessor to, you're the young lawyer, yes, when he started with enforcing a legal notice requirement on 37 Lears Lane. 4 people only were alerted to that public hearing. I was one of those 4. We immediately gathered people together, and at the next hearing, there were 37 represented in person and in letter opposing that. There was now 14 years of steamrolling through the McMansions, whereas the middle class for whom Leo Roscoe built this, started this development, has been driven out. So this is a policy matter. It is not just yours. It's not just jurisdiction, because you don't have the right to roll over us. It's a question of whether that is the policy. It was the policy of Epley. It was the policy of Michael Irving. I don't think it's the policy of the present mayor. At any rate, it is very important for you to consider this. You don't have to be a lawyer to understand what I've given you here.
Thank you, Evelyn. It's duly noted. We do listen to you. We abide by the code, and of course...
The code has nothing in the world to do with this. It's a local law. You cannot, with a local law, defy a state law. The subdivision law is a state law, and there is a hierarchy in our legal system. Otherwise, the traffic court here in Southampton could defy the United States Supreme Court, which it can't. So the code has absolutely nothing to do with this. Our deeds do, and our rights under the law that I've given you, the one-pager. There are whole books about subdivisions that are given out by New York State Department of State, which you might want to take a look at. You cannot, after a subdivision is established, rezone it. You also cannot use local laws to violate the subdivision, which has been done by policy for 15, 16 years. I thought you might reconsider that policy. Thank you.
Thank you
Any
very much. We will
questions?
definitely consider it. Thank you. Any other members of the public who would like to speak? Okay. Gentlemen, do you want to respond to the public comments?
I think Mr. Slight has one or two things to say.
Yeah, actually, I would like to address not just the public comments, but some of the comments that the board has raised.
Sure.
Let's start, though, with some of the comments were made by the public, and also, I think, reiterated a couple of concerns that I heard from the board, and that is about the size of the house. And somehow or other, it's...
No, not size, massing.
Massing? Okay, now, what can you give me how you feel with the term massing?
Mass is an overall look. It could be, if you're a scientist, it's volumetric. If you're two-dimensionalist, it's height, but it's also, Bill, part of our charge of judgment. So, for instance, you're a tall gentleman, okay? From over there, you look like a tall gentleman. If you were standing here in front of me, you'd look damn big, and if you challenged me, I'd probably run the other way. So, mass is a combination. It's a visual look. It has a qualitative component, and it surely does in the context of the ARB.
And does that also have to do with the relationship of one part to another?
Yes, that's stated in the code.
In the neighborhood.
Yep.
And neighborhood.
Right.
So that was what I was initially going for. So there's a feeling that this house somehow presents itself more massively than other houses in the neighborhood. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I believe that I handed one of your representatives a drawing that was done by another applicant that showed what we were asking for, which was your design with 3 or 4 of the buildings that are absolutely beside it in context, so that we would have more of an idea of how it stacked up in height and width and placement on the site. And so when Mr. Weinberg said you were encouraged to walk the neighborhood so that you had more of an idea. And I think that's what we have required of new design in neighborhoods, so that not just photographs, but actually in context on the site, how they stack up. Are you this big in comparison to this big? Are you this wide in comparison to the ranch house adjacent?
And so it's a matter of perspective.
Yes.
When you said in your perspective.
Have any of the board members here visited this particular site?
Yes.
Of course we do.
All of us.
And I suppose you're familiar with the fact that this portion of Roscoe Drive is relatively short. I mean, there's a house at Hill Street, and then there's this lot.
Right.
There's a lot next door, and then there's another lot that's sort of a corner lot. And across the street, on Hill Street, there's a house. And then there's a corner house, I think it's Ann's Lane, corner house.
Okay.
Has large, very large vegetation, evergreen vegetation that obscures most of the house. You do have a view of that Ansling house from Ansling and a little bit of the corner. And then cat-a-corner from this house and also from the house that's just to the south of it, there's a new home that's going up on the corner. It's not quite finished. Does that comport with what? Mm-hmm. So that's the immediate, it's immediate neighborhood. And then, of course, the larger neighborhood that we're talking about and that Mrs. Conrad refers to is what we used to call the Roscoe subdivision, and now we just call it, it's the Roscoe development. Actually, in response to what you had asked, and although it's not in the same format that you gave, I prepared this drawing. It's really basically what it is. It's a combination of the survey of our property with our proposed footprint, and it is comparing it to the house at 330 Hill Street, which is its adjacent neighbor to the north. I would have done the adjacent neighbor to the south. However, there are no documents documenting that house other than a form saying that it had gotten a building permit, but there's no survey, there's no plans in the record in the village. And short of going on the man's property, which I don't really think I would be welcome to do, I can't give you a comparison. But I will say that it's very similar to, it may be set back slightly more, but as you can see from that drawing, and the red line represents how both of the houses conform to the code required 40-foot front yard setback from the street. So I would say in that regard, the house is in conformity with its neighbors. Now, if you want me to go beyond that and show you other homes that are on similar half-acre, more or less, plus or minus half-acre lots throughout the Roscoe subdivision, I have aerial photographs here, and you can see that relatively they are lining up. They all line up pretty much along a line, which means that, and they're recently built, which means that they're conforming to that half-acre, 40-foot setback. And I'll put those into the record in just a moment. But we're also talking about, and you, Sarah, you most articulately mentioned this, about the size of the house, and the relative size of the house to the lot, the length of the house on the property. Our house is actually less long than the house that's being demolished that it will replace, okay? And it is also much less long than the house that you see on the survey on 330. Now, you can easily look at that. I mean, I don't have to give you dimensions, but you can easily see that the one house is on a...
let's understand and let's be clear, because we were having a discussion about mass and its multiple variables and elements that constitute it.
We'll get to that.
The house that you said was as long as the existing house or foundation was a ranch house.
That's correct.
Okay. So a ranch house has a very different mass presentation than a house that has a 35, I don't know.
Okay, let's take that up.
So, I mean, I think we have to start comparing apples with apples. You're allowed to state what you say, but we have to also...
Let's take that up then. If you, in this, and I'll let you
put
look
it
at
on the
this more
table, because
closely.
Charlie is still taking photographs, even, or
This
videos.
is our lot. Okay? And the way you're seeing this is the front, the roadside is the portion up above. Here is the house that's on Hill Street. here is the adjacent ranch house.
Yep.
Here is the house across the street. You can see how heavily vegetated, and let me point out that this is evergreen year-round. This is the new house that's going up catacorner from this, quite a bit larger than our house will be. But now you also can see the house at the adjacent property over here. It too is a large house. Its neighbor also, and presents very, all these are lined up at the 40-foot setback. So is this newer home here. It's another large home over here. So you just in the immediate environs of where we're building, there are other houses built out, second story, two-story houses, complex roof lines, complex presentations and many of them, by the way, are built right out, to the front of the street. I mean, there's. Let me find one here I can show you. I have a lot of pictures, so please bear with me.
And then let's move back on to having the board have a discussion on this.
Right. Let me show you a couple of other homes in the Roscoe area. These are around the corner, adjacent to each other. They are built out almost to the facade. Very, very, very little relief as far as projecting elements. 2 stories, complex roofs. Here's another. Here's a closer view of the neighbor's property. Here is our property. It's larger than a half acre. Here's a developed lot. It's less, it's smaller, but as you can see, it fully utilizes all the available footprint and lot coverage.
Right. So there are plenty of what I hear you saying is that there are plenty of different houses of different sizes, shapes, placements on the lot. So, and what we're dealing with is this, and I appreciate you showing me different on the board, different houses at different locations. When we look at a application, we're taking in the gestalt, the whole house, the visualization. And that involves multiple things. And so to parse out various elements doesn't get back to this house with this design at this location set as it is. So I appreciate your argument. On the other hand, the board has its judgment to apply and its vote to make. Personally, I'll poll the board. Is there anything, well, let me put it to you differently. The general concern was about the large, massive window, which connotes scale, excessive scale, mass, that's not harmonious with the neighborhood. Unless I'm wrong, and ladies and gentlemen, tell me, if you're still of that opinion, then as many examples as you may show us, Bill, it's not going to change it for this particular application as submitted. So is that the sentiment of the board?
Yes.
So we could spend another half an hour.
But Jeff, can I ask you a question?
No, let me finish.
Oh, yes, okay.
We could spend another half an hour here arguing this, going through 100 locations and sites. The sentiment of the board is unanimous in terms of our major concerns. You guys have done a great job in coming a long way, so I appreciate that. I think at this point, you can either ask us to vote, which will be negative, or you can take this in context in which it was given.
I'm going to tell you something. I'm here representing the client. We are done for now, because what I want to do is I want to take another look at it. I don't think, what your concern is, Bill, is that you're not being asked to totally redesign this house. Far
Not
from
at
it.
all, no.
Far
All
from it.
right, but wait,
But Bill, listen to me. You heard the sentiment of the board, they have the power,
You interrupted
I'm not
me.
interrupting.
The, you each brought up several points, and I wanted to address those points. And I believe that because you're hinting that you're going to reject this,
No, not hinting.
we have to
You
build a
express
record.
our
We have to
universal
build a
sentiment.
record, and you have to be aware that you cannot be arbitrary or capricious about
They're
what
well
you're
aware
doing.
of that.
And that arbitrariness and capriciousness are tested against the community, okay? And we often at this board talked about, well, we're not going to talk about the whole village, we're going to talk about the neighborhood this is in. So I've gone to some trouble here to bring together evidence of how this house, fits into this community. Now, this is a very, very diverse community as far as architectural styles, sizes of things. Now, I want to bring up just one final thing regarding, because you seem to have trouble with the large panes of glass at the front of the house. The community is actually characterized by homes that have very large panes of glass at the front of the building, at the center of, or the principal part of the building. Many of the homes have windows that look like this.
That's a ranch house, Bill. Please.
Okay,
For the benefit-
here's a house.
These are two different things. That's for sure.
I'm sorry, but
Bill, Bill, you put the stuff in the records, we're gonna go back and talk to the client, if the client wants to stay with this, you made your record, if the client wants to make changes, we'll come back, I think we're pretty darn close, actually, you're not being asked to redesign the whole house.
It's simply the window.
I think you've been complimented on the way you've taken the...
if you're going to challenge the fact that there are large panes of glass on the front of this house, I have a right to show you that throughout, on every single street, there are homes with huge picture windows. The same area of glass that is being used on this house. Some have little divided light windows around them, which we've added to this design. There are curved tops on them.
They are stacked up to a height of almost 2.5 stories.
Now, excuse me, that's not true either.
Gentlemen, I am asking that we table this discussion now. And John, if you are requesting an adjournment, I would willingly accept that on behalf of your client. If that's the case, thank you, Bill. Peter, please, the discussion is over. John?
It's not in the middle.
Okay, John, please.
You know what?
Okay, the chair does-
You cannot be arbitrary or capricious,
John,
and you cannot design the building. You know,
Suggesting a design.
Okay, gentlemen, Barry, I appreciate your attempt to throw out some legal terms. We've been, as John has said, we've been
arbitrary and capricious, and you have to keep that in mind and ask your attorney what that means, and ask what the test is for. And the test is the community standard.
I second the...
Thank you.
To what date? November 9th?
To November 9th. Thanks, we welcome you then, and I'm looking forward to the design that will be coming up.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thank you very much.
I'll see you later.
Are you?
Have one little...
Okay. Okay, thanks, Bill.
I will visit Village Hall, and I will submit various photographs that I've shown to you
Okay,
today.
the discussion on this application
Put
is
that
ended.
into
The
the
discussion is
record.
ended on this application. I can't even
Into
hear it.
the
I'm
official
not,
record.
really, Bill. I'm not listening to anything you said right now. The application has ended.
Well,
We're moving on to the next one.
You know,
I
listening to
I
the people
appreciate your
who,
passion, Bill. If you're not exiting in about 2 seconds,
yeah,
call the police. And if you think I'm kidding, okay, let's do it. Come on. You want to challenge me like that, Bill?
what have I done?
John, could you take your client out of here?
Come on, Billy, let's go.
Is that really the way you want to conduct it
Bill,
with the
I
public?
respect,
Is that really it?
Bill, I respect your
Okay,
passion, but
it's on the record.
the application has ended, and the
I'm
chair
not,
doesn't
I'm not,
recognize
I'm not a
you.
member of the public.
Bill,
I'm
this
the
has
representative,
nothing- this has nothing
and
to
I'm
do
the
with-
designer of the
Bill, there
house.
was a vote to close the meeting and adjourn it, that's.
Did they take the vote yet?
Yes. they
Yes.
took the vote. Yeah, yeah.
Should we move on to Richard Delaquila?
Thank you very much.
Request adjournment.
To November 9th.
To November 9th, yes.
I must
I apologize for that, folks, but I'm trying to hold a level of discord and accommodation, but I will not accept misbehavior in this room or to this board or to any of our board members. Okay? Let the public be aware of that. Okay? You can be all nice and gentle, but please, it's a two-way street.
Should vote on the adjournment request.
Okay, so the next case, and we spent a good deal of time on that, was Richard Delaquila, 227 Halsey Street, who submitted a letter requesting an adjournment. And I move that we accept the applicant's request to adjourn to the next meeting, which is what he said.
November 9th.
Do I have a second?
So moved?
So moved, okay. On vote?
Aye.
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 Aye as well. Okay. Sorry, folks, the next application is Woolley Street Properties LLC, 162 Woolley Street. To construct a two-story single-family dwelling with attached garage. Please come up to the bench. Okay. Yes. Hold on a second.
Posting. Who do I give this to?
No, it goes up to Sarah.
All right, long reach. There we go.
Okay. All right. So, do we have the proper applications?
So we have the posting and mailing part.
So, before we begin, are you folks the principals? No. You are.
I'm there.
I'm sorry?
I'm from McDonough and Conroy Architects.
You're what?
Lori from McDonough and Conroy Architects.
Okay, Lori, what's your last name?
Fontana, Fontana.
Okay. So, Lori, have you been before this board?
Yes, sir.
You have, okay, great. So you know our role and our function.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Okay, so I'm proposing a two-story single-family
What's
residence.
that? Oh, can you turn it around? Everything, is that, yeah, so have it facing us.
The camera will pick it up.
The
There's a
camera,
camera
you can put it laid
on
right
the
down
table.
Oh, if I
on
lay
the
it right
table.
here?
The other
The
way
other way
around.
around.
The other way, I'm sorry.
But bring it down a little bit.
Let me just separate this. So I
Okay,
can-
so Lori, we're going to
that's
provide you with 5 minutes or so, 10 minutes if need be, to lay out your case uninterrupted, then we're going to respond. And, but I do want to make sure in you addressing this, that you speak to, I know there's an empty lot next to it, and I don't know if that's part of this or not, but anyway, but I'll let you proceed, okay?
Okay, it's my understanding this is a combination of two lots.
So that answers that question.
Okay. It's a, like I said, two-story, single-family residence of approximately 3,985 square feet. It's proposed in the cedar shingle, painted white with shingle roof. And it has a, put these out. It's a two-car garage with a deck off the back for covered eating area over by the kitchen.
I know,
Sorry,
it's hard. They fog up, it's very
I keep
frustrating.
fogging up. I don't know if you have any questions.
If that's your presentation, then we'll turn it
That's it.
to the board. Let me start, well, we'll start in the middle with Sarah.
Okay, great.
Okay? And then we'll go to Peter.
I'm concerned because the existing building, number 162 Woolley, appears on a survey as a historic building, and it's the reference of that is WO33, and it's pre-1916 on this survey, which means that it's it was born earlier than 1923. And I think that maybe Zach might want to talk about its presence in the 2011 list. It's in the 2011 list.
Of the proposed
Yes.
expansion, right, I see, okay. I didn't look at that, but.
Right. Well,
This is news to me.
Right.
Well, there were two subsequent surveys that were conducted, and Zach produced a survey in 2011 that listed the buildings that were flagged, for want of a better expression, on these two subsequent surveys, and they have not been acted upon. And I wanted to bring this to your and to the board's attention, because we're losing them right and left.
Right. And
this is a totally intact building within an area that was to be included in an historic district. And I gather by looking at the FOIA requests in the file that there were a number of residents that were concerned to see what was being proposed. Right. I would also say that when you look at the buildings in this neighborhood, they present their main facades modestly and have a tendency to be oriented east and west, whereas the proposed new structure, which occupies two lots, occupies a horizontal spread that is.
Well, it faces Woolley Street, the front.
Yeah, but the massing, the linear aspects of it are north to south, basically, the way it spreads across the.
Correct. Okay, I do not believe that my client was aware that this was in the historic.
It was a proposed.
Okay.
And I'm raising this in order to attempt to protect.
Right. Well, there's an
subsequently.
Right, and I would assume if it's 1916, then there's an issue of its demolition permit, which I'm not questioning at this point.
I mean,
but there is.
Know if the house has been demoed at this point. I don't know the answer to that.
No,
it's still there.
It's still standing.
I'm now starting to really
panic.
No.
But please advise your client that there is an issue of concern there, and that there should be no action to unilaterally do anything to that house that would otherwise destroy its integrity.
Okay.
Not saying we're making a judgment on that, but I'm just forewarning you that it could be problematic.
So what is the next step for my client?
Well, we're going to hear from the rest of the board,
okay.
But I can assure you, based on what Sarah was saying, that we will have Zach, our historic consultant, review the property, assess its historic standing within the village.
Okay.
And the reason I asked you whether you had appeared here, now that I see you, at least your eyes, I recognize you. And we're the Board of Architectural Review and Historic.
No, and had I known
historic preservation.
Right,
So
and had I known that, I would have never.
Great. So I've already had my challenges for the evening.
No challenge.
We're fine.
No, but we want to preserve what's there.
No,
And I'm going to let the other board members' comment, because then I want to come back to that notion of preservation.
Well, I'm just going to react to what's here. Listen, I agree that we're losing everything, but I'm going to react to what's
Proposed.
proposed. I did notice that, yeah, Sarah's right. Most of the other houses are oriented, the long way is east-west. All the other houses nearby are also natural shingles or stained shingles with white windows. So I find that the black framed windows are not contextual. No other house around it that I saw has them. As far as the design, it's okay. It's not objectionable. I think it's...
My client would have no problem changing it to cedar shingles left natural with the white frame.
Yeah,
should it come down to that?
Okay, that's my comment.
Outside of the architectural issue, which I didn't know about.
He actually just took the words out of my mouth. I agree completely with the house is fine. It's very simple in design, but very characteristic of the homes in the area.
Characteristic of the area.
But I agree with the idea that you're taking two lots now where a single house sat in one lot, right? So the house itself is taking on a much bigger presence on the street than it had in the past. So that's just something I would keep in mind. But the black windows, that's
not a problem.
It's not in keeping with the neighborhood or what's really characteristic of Southampton Village as a whole, for that matter. So
it was an ask on the client's behalf. I said I had the prior discussion.
It's kind of a trend now, like barrel roofs in the 80s,
I had the conversation prior to the meeting. Would you allow me to go ahead with the left natural shingles with the white frames? And that was fine.
So, Lori, let me suggest this. In as much as we feel the need for historic review of this house.
100% agree.
And you express willingness to change the design. You've yet to hear from the public, so I do want to...
That's fine.
Anything I say now, I'm holding, reserving for further comment. But given that, I would not go back and redesign the house now and spend money on that until we hear from the historic consultant.
Absolutely, 100%.
Because we may take a totally different tack depending on that. Because again, we're looking to preserve history. So I appreciate your accommodation, but I do want to hold that back. Zach, did you want to add anything to that? I mean, you haven't looked at the property, so.
Well, I have, and given the hour, just a brief response is that there is a process in place in the village in which properties which are not within the historic district but predate 26, there's a process by which I am requested to go out and look at them. And regardless of their being identified on subsequent surveys, of which there have been 2 since 1990, unless the particular house in question meets one of the 5 specific criteria for individual landmarking, it's incumbent upon me to simply say that. And so there is a report in the file from last year, which I submitted, having inspected the house. And so that's our system. There's really, so with all respect to the chair, there's no need for me to go back out to see it, because that survey has been done and it's in the file.
So then, as much as it's in the file, I'd like to have the opportunity to review it. And I don't know to what extent you folks have, but if you indulge us with doing that,
absolutely.
I think that would make more sense than you going back and doing a wholesale redesign.
Understood.
So let's first hear from the public.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Lori.
I don't know if I should sit or...
Sit down. Yes, so now we are open to public comment. And is there a public here? You folks look like you're part of the public. So why don't please step up to that table, provide your name and your address, and then you are free to comment.
Okay.
So first your names.
Sure. James and...
Lisa Brady. And we live across the street.
Okay, so if you give me your address so Antoinette can take it down.
169 Woolley Street.
169 Woolley.
Dr. Brady?
Yes.
You sewed up my son's face, thank you.
I'm a plastic surgeon.
Oh, okay.
I make note of that.
God, we'll all do that.
We're all going to take it under. We all could use a little work, and I think I could surely use some, but maybe on different areas. Okay, so James and Lisa, so please share us your public
We live in
comments.
the yellow stucco house that has not changed since we moved in. We actually rebuilt our garage the same as it was before, in keeping with our neighborhood. And we just were curious and concerned about what was going to happen to the Fanning property.
Right. And so, as you see the design here, do you have any comments or concerns you want to share with us? And for Lori's benefit as well, for the applicant's benefit as well.
Or for the retention of poor little 162.
Well, it's beautiful, but it's big. I mean, it's unusual in that it's the only double lot, or there's maybe only one other one on the street that was developed a few years ago. And so that's the whole thing. It's going to be a much bigger house than all of the other houses on Woolley Street. But that was basically it. We're just seeing it for the first time now.
By the way, the files are open to the public in Village Hall. Anytime you want to go in, they'd be happy to see you, even wearing a mask. And so, okay, well that's beneficial because it gives me a thought to share with Lori. Thank you much for coming.
Very much.
Okay.
And thank you for taking care of your house.
Yes, for sure.
So, Lori, if you want to come back up, the chair recognizes you again, and literally and figuratively. So, given the Brady's comments, what you could do between now and the next meeting is to provide a streetscape of how this house would appear in full perspective with houses on either side. And are we looking across the street?
I think one side's enough.
One side, okay. So I'm not sure if there are even more than two houses to the left facing. I know there's at least, no, actually there are. There are two houses. So from the end of the street, the end of Woolley Street, where it T-bones to, what is that, Pulaski? Or
Pelletro.
Thank you. From there, and three houses to the right facing.
Okay.
Okay, and to do it in perspective, the CAD/CAM stuff can do all of that stuff, so we get a sense to answer the Brady's question and concern as to, okay, yes, you've got two lots, but is it going to be massive and disharmonious for the neighborhood? So let's address that. Zach's going to do his work, or he's already done it. We're going to do our review.
And I will change the color to natural with the white trim and put it in the new scape of that street.
Okay, yeah, if you want to do that, sure, that would surely help. Okay, so since you're not asking us to vote, then I assume you're asking us to adjourn.
I'm asking you to adjourn till I don't know, it's the 19th?
9th is the next.
The 9th? Okay.
Right.
Yes.
And Lori, any submissions have to be in by that Thursday before? So that's essentially 10 days from now?
Okay, I can do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Oh,
Do we vote on the adjournment?
no, thank you. I move that we accept the applicant's request to adjourn to the next meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks,
Aye.
Dr. Brady.
Okay, Chris. Okay, so let me go on to the next application. Okay, we've got a ways to go. Wow.
You just sort them right up.
Okay, I gotta talk less. So the next application, number 4, is TDC 270LC 270 Toilsome Lane, amend prior ARB approval. Okay, so first off, let's have your name.
Sure. Good evening, members of the board. Brian DeSessa, 2462 Main Street, Suite 7, Bridgehampton, New York. Attorney for the applicant.
Hey, Brian.
Okay, so you're looking to amend an application. You will surely speak to us about that which you choose to amend and why. But I understand this came up because you chose to amend. You're here to ask for apology.
I'm here to apologize to the board on behalf of the applicant.
Okay.
I didn't do any of the work, but yes, I'm
Right.
here. I'm
Well,
here to deliver the message to the
we
board.
have
for that.
We will not, I'm sorry?
We have the affidavits, do we have jurisdiction?
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you.
Sorry.
I had that in my outline and already I forgot. So let's continue on. Okay.
The new application appears to be here.
Here. Okay.
Yes, affidavit of posting and,
And I did recall seeing the disclosure affidavit.
yep, both are here.
Thank you.
All right, so this was, there was construction done without approval.
That is correct.
Our crack building department noticed it. So, you know, what that does is, Brian, is it really opens up, in my mind, the entire project. Because otherwise this board finds itself in a position of piecemealing things. And somebody
Absolutely.
gets approval to do X, then they do X plus something else, and then they say, well, but you approved that. But again, as we've said with other meetings, it's the whole thing we're looking at. So if you change one part, it changes the other. So as far as I'm concerned, board members, you can comment on anything, whether it's been approved previously or not. So
I don't disagree with that,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. And
I appreciate that. So tell us about what you did in the
sure. So during the pandemic,
you were busy.
I wasn't busy, but somebody was busy, and that's why I'm here. But so the plans you have, I have on the table before you. On my left, your right, was the previously approved house, more of a barn style with overhead oversight. I brought copies so that I can hand out extra copies to the board of the previous approved house. So I can hand this up to everybody.
Oh my gosh, it's like night and day.
Yep. Then you have the current set, is that what you have?
Yeah, we have the current.
Yeah, okay. So that was the previously approved set. That is handed up to the board that was previously approved in, I believe it was December of 19, for a different style house. So the footprint remained the same, the house side remained the same, the aesthetics changed to more what I would submit to the board in keeping with the character of the community over there. It was simplified more.
Wait, this approval, I'd have to go back to my notes. This wasn't, is this the approval upon which you were building?
Yes.
This one?
Yes.
Okay.
And I had flu, so I didn't review it.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine, go ahead.
I didn't handle that application, but in
Right.
checking with the records, the set, black and white set that I just handed to the board was the previously approved elevations and set design for the house that was approved for the board, on which a building permit was issued and construction commenced. What we're here asking for permission for tonight is the set that you have in your hands, the color set, which was the modifications and alterations from the house that were made at the project site. It's a different house.
Yeah,
So-
it's a different.
Yeah, I'm
so-
not-
And I don't want to go into length of this, but
Yeah,
I don't, who's the builder here, who's the contractor, who is, I mean, is this?
J&S Construction and Contracting is the
And
contractor.
so
of the project.
how do we go from this to this? And were it not for the building department realizing that, hey, this isn't it, how does somebody do, I don't understand.
I don't have a good answer for you on that, because there's not a good answer for that, because the procedures are the procedures, and unless you don't know the procedures, that's the only way you wind up here.
Well, I'm assuming this isn't this architect's or contractor's first rodeo.
No.
Have they built here in Southampton before?
I don't know about the builder, I could find out for that.
You know, it doesn't matter.
I can find out, I don't know the answer, I would tell you if I knew the answer.
If he's built anything more than...
He's built other houses, not in the village that I'm aware of, but other houses,
he
yes.
knows that an approved plan is what you build.
Yeah.
This constitutes deception, okay? Not a bad house.
Yeah,
but not an honorable person to deal with.
Yeah, I don't think the process in
anyway,
which it happened.
Let me move on. We've got this.
We're here. I agree.
Okay, continue.
So the entire house, as you can see, was changed to something more of traditional in style. I do have the architect here, who is the architect, Mr. Angona, who has designed the new house, not the previous house.
Happy to say it to his face, too.
Well, he was, yeah. So he doesn't do the building; he does the design. So
the house has been constructed.
It is, yes.
Yeah, it's up.
That's correct.
Right.
Yep. So the house itself was changed to a more traditional two-story house, clapboard siding, cedar roof, white windows, trim. As you can see from the plans, the footprint, which was the original approved footprint, was the one that did remain the same. But I do understand, as the comments started off, that everything is subject to review, since we're here now for what was not previously approved. In looking through that neighborhood, this house, I would submit, is more in style as to what is on that street and in the neighborhood than the previously approved. Not that makes it right as to how the change went. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying in terms of the character of that community, I would submit that this fits more into, what that area of the village looks like.
So if that's...
I mean, I don't have much more because it's a different house, so we got to get a review from the board, so I can't...
Okay. No, I appreciate your forthrightness, Brian,
yeah, it's not
and your honesty.
trying to hide anything.
We're not here to kill the messenger,
yeah.
Although if people had seen my...
The message that we convey back, so
they might question that, but in any event. So, Peter, starting with you, your thoughts on this...
Way better than the first one. And I don't have any problem with it at all. I might object to the cupola on the garage, just because usually they're the tallest thing around, and this is, lower than all the other roofs behind it. That's my only objection.
Okay. John?
It's good. I could buy it.
I actually like the first one better, but that's neither here nor there at this point.
Well, it is. I mean, if the building department said, if someone were to build a house 6 inches taller, and it's probably happened to Chris, than it is.
Well, I think it's obscene.
People have taken down houses because they were not built according to the plan. So, anyway, I'm saying you don't have to apologize. Brian has done it amply, so let's...
Yeah, I totally get that. But just, I thought that the original house was kind of nice. But I agree with the cupola and the finial. Looks a little too ornamental for that type of a house. And also the second floor balcony. The original design had no balcony on the back of the house.
On the rear elevation.
Right. So is there a privacy issue for neighbors, adjacent neighbors, that wasn't addressed in the original approval?
Okay. Sarah? I'm sorry. John, is that it?
Yep.
Okay. Sarah?
I was concerned, I didn't know the backstory. I was concerned with I think it's the north elevation has shutters that appear to be inoperable. When closed, they wouldn't cover the window, or they don't appear.
Correct. The north elevation is the rear of the house. That is correct in that.
But it's that sort of thing that bugs me, because why have a shutter even if it's inoperable if it's this big and the window is this big?
Stylistic, I can ask. I know it was just a style choice they made, but...
They're mislabeled, by the way. South is north and north.
Yeah, there are two norths.
Okay.
I have 8.1 as north and 9.1 as north.
The north elevation is a street elevation.
Right, and 8.1 is the...
Yep. The rear.
So are there any comments, you want to respond to the board's comments?
No, I take those back, that's, yeah.
Any comments from the public? If you're a principal and you have something to say, you're the architect, I gather?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're welcome to say something, you're welcome to comment.
So,
I need your name for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Charles Angona, A-N-G-O-N-A. So I see your comment on the shutters and the double windows. I mean, historically, those could have been bifold shutters that, you know, could potentially be functional and actually cover the window. But I see your point, and it was a tricky kind of, when you're dealing with shutters, it's always a tricky thing to kind of manage.
It's just sort of a cheesy thing.
You know,
Sorry.
no, I totally
You're
get it.
absolutely
I
right,
totally
and
get it.
it's something we would have obviously reviewed had it been presented to
Yeah,
us.
you know, if you have a shutter, it
Yeah, those could be eliminated.
We could eliminate those on the rear.
Smaller than what it should be.
Of course, no, I agree with you 100%.
Okay. So if I might summarize, we've got a few issues, 3 issues. One is the cupola. Yeah. Which, interestingly enough, before I realized that this was an issue, I felt that it just stuck out. And so, anyway, so there's if we were looking at this de novo, we would say, gee, the cupola seems out of context and changes the presentation and the massiveness of the house, and actually takes away from, I think, from the design of the house. Secondly is the second floor balcony, and so what we generally would request, again, if this was de novo, and it doesn't mean that we might ask for a change on that, is a line of sight to the adjacent property.
Sure.
From line of sight, meaning from somebody who is average height, which is usually about 6 inches taller than me. But in any event, you know, from like 6 feet line of sight. And the fact that it may be screened is helpful to know, but that doesn't impact us necessarily because trees can disappear.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is Sarah's comments, and somebody else had mentioned about inoperable shutters. I mean, to the extent that that is something you can work with and change, what's the material of the shutters that you're putting on now?
I believe it would be painted wood.
Anyway, so those are the 3 takeaways I have, and why don't you folks come back with a
Yeah, we can address those
redesign,
3 points and come back.
And so, in this case, you would be asking.
Yes, our request for adjournment to your November meeting.
Okay, great.
Which I believe is the 9th?
November 9th.
Yeah, yep.
And any submissions should be in by Thursday before noontime for us to review.
On the 5th.
And if they're not, we simply won't hear.
Sure.
Because we have to give not only the board but the public the right to look at it. So, that being said, I move that we accept the applicant's request for adjournment to November 9th for TDC 270 LLC.
Great, thank you. Have a good evening. Thank you for your time.
Oh, on vote?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you, Brian.
Bye, Brian.
Thank you, Charles. Okay, so, okay. So, is everybody happy? Okay, good.
Hetty Creek, both affidavits are there.
So the next application will be that of Hetty Creek Lane, LLC. And whoever's representing Lori, I recognize Lori, and even though I have a short memory, I recognize you from just a little while ago. It seems like just minutes ago we were together.
I know.
Oh, thank you. But that being said, Lori, you will have to restate your name and present what you have.
Lori
Affidavit
Fontana.
approaching. Lori
Fontana, Fontana.
Okay.
Affidavits? You good?
Yes. Yep. She has the affidavits and disclosure. Okay. So, you can say your piece, young lady.
Okay, so I'm back before you again, presenting a two-story, one-family residence of 6,318 square feet. It is a little bit more modern in design. It does have cedar shingles and stucco. This is the color of the stucco, and this is the color of the cedar shingles.
Hold on a second. Let me just get to the rendering of this.
Oh, so it's white on white kind of.
It's white on white, yes.
Which one is it? Hold on one
And
second.
this is with the black
Okay.
windows also.
And, all right, and this has
And this
pictures in it.
does have a entrance gate, which is, this is the design, but it's all white and it's metal.
All right, hold on a second, just put it, Charlie, even though we can't see it.
Yeah, I don't know, I can't see where you can't.
Right, okay, so put that down. There
we go.
Full circle.
What was it playing?
Go like
My
that.
arms
There we
are,
go.
my arms are too short to
Boxing
touch
ball.
God. Yeah, to touch God.
Boxer.
Boxing day. Okay. So, other than laying out the plans, you want to go into more
So,
detail as to what
The
style
center
is, the
massing,
materials, and-
the center massing is all stucco in the center. The two gables on each end, is shingle. The garage is shingle, and if you come around to the front, again, the center piece is stucco. The little connect between the garage and one of the gables is stucco, and then the garage is stucco.
Do we have in the file a color rendering of this?
No, they did not want to do a rendering.
Well,
So essentially anything set back is stucco.
Pretty much, yes. It's AZAC in between the first and second floor on the gable ends and around the windows in the garage. The chimneys are all stucco. And again, the white is the white that I'm showing you here on the table.
And it's called out as synthetic stucco.
Yeah. The windows are black. I think I said that, but I just want to make sure that I said that again.
all right. Lori, is there more you want to add, or that's it?
No, that's it.
So let's start with you, Peter.
Okay. Overall, I think it's fine. I have some comments. The AZEC panels between the first and second floor, is that just one panel? Because I mean, it looks like it's just one panel. I think it should be panelized. I think you need to do some, styles and rails.
I would have no problem separating it to put the lines in between it so that it more match
so
the
it's like
windows.
you do 3 panels maybe to line up the the windows.
Agreed.
Because sometimes it ends up looking like painted plywood. You lose.
Full disclosure, that's the way I had it. The client made me take it out.
Okay, well, then you know what you're doing. The front door to be selected, we have to see that.
It's just it's a single pane glass.
That's
That's
all
all.
right. Well, I sort of have an issue with that since front doors are generally don't look like patio doors. Usually they're solid.
Well, there we're looking more for a modern type look.
No, I know. I mean, you can have a modern solid door, but anyway, that's just me.
Okay.
It looks awfully glassy in the middle, but I'd like to hear what other people say. And then, of course, the frame around the window, the garage window. Yeah.
It's recessed 6 inches, and then that's AZAC around that.
Oh, okay. I can't really tell what it is.
Yeah.
All right.
It's hard to tell in the.
Yeah, and then of course I did go by, and yes, I know there is a new house at the corner at the bend that has the black windows, but none of the other ones do. And I would love for that not to become the village standard. So those are my comments.
Sarah?
there's a lot of use of synthetic materials. You've got AZAC, which, although when painted doesn't look like it's plastic. But I concur with Peter's suggestion that the panels, above all on those big expanses of plastic, would be the banks of. There's a whole. It's modern. It's modernistic, I guess, is
right.
The way that
Which is more what
James Marston Fitch would have described it. It's not modern.
No.
It's not. It's got 1 foot here and 1 foot there. And as a result, it's not one of my favorite designs.
John?
A few things. I actually looking at the terraces on the back of the house, both actually fairly large. One 26 by 19, the other essentially 18 by 19. Is again, that could be a potential privacy issue for neighbors surrounding the property, and that's something I think we should ask for a sightline type of review.
Is there a balcony?
Yeah, on the back side, two terraces.
Oh, okay.
The other thing, aside from the materials, that comment, I think that the windows in the front, there seem to be a lot of windows, first of all, in the center of the house. But the size of the windows on both sides, the stacked windows, just seems really strong to me.
Okay.
In the same way that we've talked about in some other properties, it seems a bit, quote unquote, monumental.
Yeah, well said.
Well, the front, as far as the front, that's a staircase, really basically across the front. So they wanted all the light on the staircase.
That's fine. I mean, the interior is not really our territory, our wheelhouse, but from the exterior.
No, I'm just explaining why the
yeah, sure.
windows are.
I just think that theirs is very imposing. In addition to the black window panes, which I think are not characteristic of the village or the surrounding homes for the most part, and I just don't think they're appropriate.
So what I'm hearing from the board are issues of style, material, placement in terms of sight lines, colors. So I agree with my board members in terms of the windows, and had you been listening earlier, we had a rather long discussion about floor to ground, floor to roof line windows. Okay. And even though that these have a divide between them, the impression, at least to my eye, is this is still two floor to ceiling windows with a break of some material in there, which apparently is not necessarily acceptable to the board members. And then you have a glass door, you've got windows all across. I mean, perhaps in the vernacular of a modern house, it's okay. In terms of how it presents to the street, I think what you hear the board members saying is that it's a wall of windows, monumental in stature, and then when you get to the materials, there's a concern about synthetics, including stucco, AZAC, black windows, I don't know whether it was plywood versus plastic, black window panes, and then the stucco chimney. I'm not sure if that's consistent or, I don't know, that was Sarah on the stucco on the chimney, or Peter or John, is that an issue to you? If there's
that wasn't a kind of issue for me.
Wasn't an issue, okay. So, and then unless it's in the file, and unless I missed it, which it might be, there was no color rendering, was there?
No.
So
there was one.
If you're planning on coming back with essentially the same design and the same materials, then one I would request, either way, we're going to request a color rendering. Okay. I appreciate the fact that you brought the samples, which is wise. and that inasmuch as that there are issues regarding the line of sight to other properties from the balconies, if you can provide that, which is basically superimpose a 6-foot person looking eye level towards the property.
From
that they would be
ground
looking-
level, or?
No, from the second floor
Okay,
balcony.
that's what I wanted to be clear on.
In relationship to the next house.
Got you.
Okay, on either side or in back or whatever. So, do we need a streetscape? Peter, are you looking for that, or do you know the area well
Well,
enough?
that's actually a good point. Given the design of the house, it kind of varies from the typical in Southampton. I think it's appropriate to have a street.
Yeah.
Okay, so to complete the file, we're looking for the following. A streetscape which shows in perspective and color to the extent you can, that house and in relationship to houses 3 on either side.
Okay.
And again, in perspective. Secondly, a line of sight drawing from second floor balconies to adjacent properties. and
Okay.
houses. And that's in terms of completing the file. Now, in terms of the actual design and materials, I think you heard the comments.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what you do with all of that.
I'll do my best to speak to my clients. They were pretty adamant on what they wanted.
Yeah.
You know, it seems to be in the center section facing the front.
Mhm.
There's not enough stucco there or something. You know, it's like
It is stucco.
there's so little. No, there's not enough. There's not enough wall area there to justify it being a different material. I think.
It starts to look a little commercial, actually, with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I appreciate your client's desires, and maybe the board is on adamant, but again, our responsibility to the village is to do that which is harmonious. And so there are issues of concern regarding the style, the materials, and the siting. And so we work with folks. So hopefully they'll work with us, and hopefully, they'll get an approval at some reasonable amount of time.
If by chance, I will know probably by tomorrow whether or not all that you asked for can be accomplished by the 4th, which is when you would need it in by, correct?
Right.
I think the 5th.
Okay, the 5th.
The Thursday.
Right. What would be if that couldn't be accomplished by then, when would be the next? We would just get thrown over until?
It's 2 weeks hence.
Yeah, 2 weeks hence, okay.
So you can adjourn to the next meeting.
I'll adjourn to the next meeting, and then if I have to, I'll adjourn to the next meeting.
The 23rd would be the next meeting.
Yeah.
Right. So, I move that we accept the applicant's request at 105, for 105 Hetty Creek Lane LLC, to adjourn that application until the next meeting, November 9th. So I have a second. Thank you, Sarah.
Aye.
Okay, aye, all around. Ayes all around.
Thank you for your time.
And thanks, Lori.
Thank you.
What's the one side? Streetscape.
Is it warm in here, or is it just me?
I'm pretty warm. I'm wearing a wool blazer. Not helping. I couldn't make out that balcony. I couldn't see the balcony.
Oh,
Color.
that's one of the first things I look for.
Like I
Did
couldn't.
you ask her for a color?
It blends in with the design.
You guys only have one meeting this month. So the meeting on the 23rd was eliminated earlier this year.
Oh, really?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we haven't taken any applications, and that would have already have been done so.
Okay.
Was that,
So the next one is December 14th.
that's Thanksgiving week? is that?
Thanksgiving week.
Oh, all right, sorry.
Thanks, Chris.
Boy. Okay, with this whole COVID, but I'm not sure which day. I literally woke up the other day thinking it was not the day it was.
Yeah.
It happens.
Okay, great, thank you, folks. Okay, so now on to the next application, which is the application of 63 Howell LLC, 63 Howell Street, and that is a request to construct a 2-story single-family dwelling and detached garage. And CU, do we have in the file, and have you provided affidavits of posting, mailing, and disclosure.
Disclosure is here.
Okay,
Who should I give it to?
you can give it to Mr. Peter.
Okay, that's the mailing.
Okay, so I've got the disclosure and the mailing.
You got mailing, and how about posting?
Both.
Okay. And for the record, please give us your name so Antoinette can get it.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Yu Liu. I'm the architect for 63 Howe Street. This is a corner lot. We have two front. One is facing Pelham, and the other one is facing Howe. The building we are building is old traditional material, wood shingles for the roof, and the siding is cedar shingle, Cape Cod gray, and the windows and trims are all going to be white, and you know, it's not like it's pretty straightforward. And I'm gonna spread it out. This is the Pelham side. This is Woolly side, and this is the rear yard, and that's the place the neighbor.
So wait, the top one is the...
This is the Pelham
The
side.
front elevation is the...
Pelham.
Pelham is the west elevation, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And the south elevation is Howell.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Is there more you want to tell us here, or would you like to hear comments from the board?
I think it's not like a lot to talk about this one.
Okay. And there's a detached garage?
Yes, sorry about that one. There's a detached garage, yes. And no French doors on the garage this time. We have the fireplace as a focal point.
So John, let's begin with you.
Believe it or not, I don't have any issues with the plan.
All right. Let's swing over to Sarah.
I noticed that these are simulated divided lights, and it seems to me that for a property that is costing a fair amount, that you might consider true divided lights rather than simulated. No. Okay.
No, true divided light is actually not as good, because simulated you have the air gap in there, so you have the energy rating. Because if you true divided light, the bar actually is thicker. It actually doesn't look as good. Simulated looks better. We'll have the nice simulated, not those like plastic.
Not the flimsy
It will be
ones.
on. It will be on both sides, so it looks
Okay,
true.
good. Or as they say in this house, stimulated light.
We're not buying the cheap one.
Peter?
Well, I think the elevations are fine. The roof plan is not good, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's very confused, and it shows in the elevations, particularly I think on, is it Howell Street? Which one is Howell, the south?
South elevation, yeah.
The south is Howell. I think it's, I don't know, it doesn't look organized. The roofs are all over the place. I don't understand this gable in the front elevation that's straddling these two roof pitches.
Oh, because I have a staircase that's dark, that's inside the house, and that actually provides a light to the staircase.
Okay. Why do you have so many pitches? You know, they start off one pitch and they switch to another.
Can
I don't know.
Can you be a little bit more specific?
Yeah, and looking at the front elevation, the forward of the gable that's lighting up the stair is a shallow pitch, and then behind it is a steeper pitch. That's kind of unusual.
Which one? The 8 and 12?
Yeah.
The A4 front elevation.
This
Uh-huh.
goes up to that.
But, you know, it's unusual to have a roof in 2 pitches. You know, it looks kind of just put together, ad hoc. It doesn't look intentional.
Because I want to squeeze that window in for the staircase.
Well, I think the roof, I'm sorry, I find the roof plan not good. And it has an effect. You know, you see the roof plan in the elevations. I think it has to be done with more care. It's not pitching a tent over a suite of rooms. You know, it's part of the design of the house. It's integral. It's a 3-dimensional problem. And I think you've neglected that. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. So let me summarize and also add in my issues. Materials are generally good. Style is generally good. The roof line and the what I will call attic gable present in this neighborhood as which is a neighborhood of modest houses for the most part, including some residual ranch houses, but there's not anything in that neighborhood that has anything like the appearance of a 3-story house. I will grant you that the house across the street on the south side of Howell and Pelham is a house that has multiple gables in the front. So there's, to me, looking at this, especially with this roof that's squared off to the left-facing side, which would be it's west to the north side. To me, that presents a boxy look on otherwise a house that should have a line like this. And if it's to accommodate the owner's wishes for better light, more attic capacity or whatever, the fact is it creates a massive, it presents as a 3-story house that's more massive and out of harmony with the other houses in the neighborhood. And without looking at it with an architect's eye, I think because of Peter's concerns, an analysis of the multiple roof lines is that to the layman, I'm coming back to you saying it looks boxier than it needs to. It looks like a 3-story house in a 2-story neighborhood. In fact, even with 1-story houses nearby. And to the extent you can come back with something that tones it down, which I know you did when we had the house on the corner of Armand and Moses, which was an issue. And this has some of those same issues. So I know you're capable of creating a 2-story house that looks like a 2-story house. And if it means internal sacrifices in terms of lighting, staircase, or attic space, that's not our issue. We want to be accommodating, but we do have to address the neighborhood and the design.
So you are saying that you prefer to see a hip roof here? Is that what you're trying?
To me, it would look less massive. Now, I don't know how that then plays into your overall roof line, but from a street standpoint, a hip roof on the north side, to me, would mitigate the squareness and massiveness of the house. Peter or any other board members, is that something that...
It does balance out the facade, actually.
It's that kink in the roof at the north.
Mm-hmm.
It's that, you know, those 2 pitches facing the street. Okay? It doesn't look nice on the side either.
So Peter, your major concern is this gable, is that, or is it because, is it the gable that bothers, or is it
Well,
the
just
pitch that
on
bothers?
the north elevation, it's the, I don't know, nothing
Yeah,
really
no,
lines up, you know?
I agree with Peter in terms of it's asymmetrical, and then you add that expanse onto the roof line, it makes the house more massive than I think this board generally thinks is appropriate for that neighborhood. Then you add the third-story gable, which I don't believe any of the surrounding houses, and I live nearby, have a third-story window like that. Some have gables that might be second story or second floor gables, but not third story. So,
The fenestration of the north elevation is also, on the second floor, is also random.
Well, that side, you don't really see it. It's a neighbor side, it's like it's 20 feet from the property line, so you generally don't see that
but
elevation.
you would see it if you're driving along, if you're driving west on Howell Street. Wait.
You won't see that.
No,
elevation.
okay, you're right on that.
You only see the
you would
rear
not-
elevation.
You would not see that, that's right.
You probably get a glimpse of the rear elevation, but the north elevation, I don't think anybody could really see it.
Yeah.
Well, it's you know, sometimes the room on the second floor dictates where you put the windows. And I'll try to be logical on the street side.
Yeah, because you've got that second floor window almost to the edge of the house.
Corner board.
To the corner board, thank you. And then you have no window below it, which, maybe there's a reason for
There's
a
a
solid wall,
kitchen.
maybe that's a kitchen, I don't know
Yeah, it's
what.
a kitchen. But I don't think anybody really be able to see the facade completely there. So I think just it's probably a little hard for me to adjust that.
I don't know, that may not be a hill to die on, but I think the way it presents to the street, which is related to the roof lines and the third-story gable or window, I think presented a challenge to this board. And so I would ask you to think about that and see if you can incorporate that in a new submission with different design. And at the same time, whatever you come up with, provide us with the streetscape of the houses to the side. And in this case, since it's a corner lot, the two across the street, the one on the south side of the corner, the southeast corner, which is across the street from. Just a streetscape of houses, 2 and 3 to the side, even if it means crossing the street.
How many do you need?
What do you say?